Welcome to a new Draw My Life video. The Maid of Orleans, Jeanne d'Arc, better known for us as Joan of Arc, was a military leader in France during 1429 and 1430. She was born on January 6, 1412. Her last name, of Arc, comes from her dad, Jacques d'Arc, though it is also found in documents as Stark, Tark, Dare, Day, but translated it's something like of Arc. Jacques, along with his wife Isabelle Romée, owned 50 acres in the community of Domremy in France. Joan's dad, apart from being a farmer, also had a minor position as a village official, heading the local watch. When Joan of Arc was born, France was facing a long war against England, known as the 100 Years' War, an armed conflict that lasted for 116 years. Its purpose was to decide who would control the great possessions the English monarchs had accumulated since 1154 in French territory. Since she was 7, Joan already knew she was special. She used to say she had mystic visions that guided and protected her. With time, they started becoming more vivid. She could see St. Catherine, St. Margaret, and St. Michael. These visions told her she had to be good and merciful, and they became more and more epic each time. In the first months of 1429, during the 100 Years' War and when the English were about to conquer Orleans, those voices encouraged her to help the Dauphin, later on King of France, Charles VII, who hadn't been crowned yet. The voice, that of St. Michael, the saint protector of France, told her that she'd be the one to relieve the siege of Orleans, which had started in 1428. Joan decided to accomplish her destiny, tried to convince Robert de Baudricourt, captain of a royal garrison in the north of Domremy, to provide her with escort to go to Orleans. It took more than a year for that captain to help Joan when he saw she had the support of the people. In 1429, he lent her a horse and escort of several soldiers. Joan cut her hair and dressed as a man for her trip towards the war. When she arrived, they were suspicious, but in the end they accepted her in the battle where the French ended up winning. It is difficult to define clearly Joan's role in the relief of Orleans. Historians highlight two things. She preferred the banner over the sword, and she meant a great moral impulse for her army. Others say she was more than that. She was a very talented tactician and a successful strategist, and she was only 17 years old. After winning in Orleans, her new nickname was born, Joan, the Maid of Orleans. And after this victory came some others under her leadership for Charles VII, until her final battle came. On May 23, 1430, she had to defend Compiègne from an attack from the Burgundians, an ally of the English. This city was in front of a bridge and it could be a potential siege point. Joan commanded her army against the enemy forces, but they were bigger than expected and managed to capture the prized Maid of Orleans. Joan of Arc was then taken to Rouen for her trial. Between February 21st and March 24th, 1431, she was interrogated almost a dozen times by a jury, where she was accused of heresy and subject to intense interrogations. In total, up to 70 charges were presented against her. The most serious of all, that of inventing false revelations and divine appearances. In the end, she was accused of heresy and condemned to be burned at the stake on May 29, 1431. The next day, she was executed in front of around 10,000 people. She was 19 years old. Joan lived a life full of mysticism, and her death couldn't be any different. There is a legend that says her heart survived the fire with no damage. Some years later, Charles VII, having already won the war, asked for a revision of the trial, and Joan was freed of all charges. In 1920, she was declared a saint and patron saint of France by Benedict XV. The War of the 100 Years was one of the longest and hardest conflicts in the history of humanity. And even though Joan didn't win the war, she did change things completely, getting an almost defeated France to start a counterattack stronger than ever.